I'm Luna, 27 years old, and I'm head over heels in love with George, my dashing husband. We recently embarked on this exciting journey called marriage, and we're still basking in the honeymoon phase. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, but let me not get ahead of myself. Let me take you back to how it all began. George and I are not your average couple. We come from high-flying, wealthy families that belong to New York's elite. But please don't mistake me for a spoiled rich brat. I've got a story to tell that's about more than extravagant galas and designer gowns. Our paths first crossed at a glittering charity ball. Picture a grand ballroom adorned with chandeliers that could make stars jealous, guests dressed to the nines, and a tower of champagne flowing like a river. George, my tall, dashing beau, caught my eye from across the room. It was like a fairy tale. We got to know each other and fell head over heels in love. We had many similarities but were also quite different, especially in how we were raised. My parents always showered me with love, attention, and life advice. George's family, on the other hand, spoke a different language: money. His nanny practically raised him, and his parents missed more milestones than I'd had hot dinners. But I'm not one to judge. Love can overcome a lot, right? Fast forward to our engagement day. George, being the smooth operator he is, whisked me away on a private jet to a secluded island. Imagine the sun setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, George down on one knee with a ring. Of course, I said yes immediately. Our parents finally met, and it was like watching two worlds collide. At least they were polite to each other. Before we knew it, our wedding day was fast approaching. My fabulous bestie Cassie, my maid of honor, was a lifesaver, helping me tackle all the wedding prep madness. But then came the time to personally invite our parents, and that's where things got tricky. My parents lived abroad, so a quick visit wasn't practical. George's parents, however, were in the same city, New York City, living the high life in their penthouse on the Upper East Side. One fine day, George and I decided to visit his parents' penthouse. His dad, the business tycoon, was away on some important deal, so it was just us and his mom, Diana. Meeting Diana was always an adventure. She was a complex character, and I never quite knew where I stood with her. We had only met a couple of times before, and she hadn't been particularly nice to me. "Hi, Mom. It's been a while. How have you been?" George greeted her. "George, honey, and Luna. Nice of you to drop by." "I've been well, thank you. I brought your favorite macarons from that bakery downtown. Oh, and here's the wedding invitation. We know it's a formality since you'll obviously be coming, but we wanted you to have one." "Of the wedding, right?" she said, opening the invitation. "Is it on October 14th? "Yes, Mom. We're so excited." "Excited. I would love to come, but I'm sorry, I can't. I've had a trip to Florence planned for months. Flights, hotel bookings, the works. You get it, right? I can't bail out on a girl's trip, you know." "Mom, it's our big day. It would mean so much to us if you could be there." "George, I love you, but this trip is non-negotiable. We've missed other important events, like your graduation, and everything turned out fine." "Mom, it did, but we're talking about my wedding year. I'm your only child." I thought. "Yeah, I was so excited to have you there as well. You are my family too," I added. "Luna, please, this is not about you. It's about my plans, my life. I can't shuffle everything around for your wedding. Weddings are not really my thing. All that fuss, not my cup of tea. But I do wish you both happiness. Mom, can't you reconsider?" George pleaded. "I've made up my mind, George. I'm sorry. I hope you understand. I have always made it up to you, haven't I?" "Yeah, Mom, you have. I promise I will this time as well. I'll send your dad, though." "Really? I'm glad he's going to be there. Have fun on your trip." Anyway, I was seriously ticked off as we left Diana's penthouse. She had bailed on George's life events more times than I could count, and now she was ditching her son's wedding for a girl's trip to Florence. That was a new level of unacceptable. George was crushed, and I knew him well enough to see it. He had been looking forward to having his family around for our big day, and her last-minute change of plans had shattered his excitement. Having known George for a long time, it was clear that his mom had always been a major letdown. She had this knack for making him believe she cared, but her actions screamed the opposite. It was like she used his love for her as leverage for her own gain. George had shared stories from his childhood that painted a pretty sad picture. From what he told me, she had manipulated him into thinking she was a caring mom, only to let him down over and over. I couldn't help but feel protective of George, knowing how deeply she'd hurt him. I wanted to make this day perfect for him. Later that night, after George finally fell asleep, I made a special phone call to Diana. "Luna, why on earth are you calling me at this hour?" she answered. "I called you because I wanted to personally invite you to our wedding. I am begging you, please be there for George. He has opened up to me several times about how he has felt let down by your absence in his life. He had that same look on his face today." "Oh wait, so now you're going to tell me what I did wrong while raising my son. Who do you think you are?" she snapped. "No, ma'am, that's not what I meant. I just thought being at the wedding would mean a lot to him. I'm not here to blame you or change the past. I just wanted to extend an invitation. First of all, stop calling me mom. Let alone a daughter-in-law. I can never even consider you a part of our family. I never even liked you. You are nothing compared to my son. He's handsome and smart, and you are, let's just say, you are not the brightest bulb in the box. I don't know how this happened. I love him, and he loves me. We're building our own life together, and we're happy. Oh, how touching. Love conquers all, right? Well, good luck with that fairy tale, Luna, because you'll be needing it." "What do you mean?" "Have your little wedding, Luna, but remember, you will always be an outsider in our family. You don't know what you're getting into. If you continue down this path, you will regret it, and there will be consequences. I'm willing to face whatever comes my way. Suit yourself, darling. Bye-bye." By then, I had pretty much given up on trying to patch things up with Diana. Her outright hostility was like nothing I had ever encountered. So I decided to keep our conversation to myself. No point in adding to George's pre-wedding jitters, right? I just played nice and pretended everything was all right. Over the next month, wedding preparations continued and it felt, well, kind of weird. I could relate to those people who had to bite their tongues and put on a happy face even when they felt like screaming. It was like navigating uncharted territory where emotions simmered beneath the surface. We had to keep them locked up. Finally, the big day arrived and we had our rehearsal dinner. We had booked an entire hotel for the week, so all our guests were staying there. Our rehearsal dinner and wedding ceremony were also held at the same hotel. Diana's absence was conspicuous, and I could feel the tension in the room. After all, it was supposed to be the groom and his parents who hosted the rehearsal dinner. Even though George's dad was there, people were exchanging puzzled glances, wondering why George's mother was missing on such an important occasion. But then Diana made her special appearance. I could not believe my eyes. Wasn't she supposed to be sipping wine in Florence? Yet there she was, striding up to George and me. Wow, isn't this a picture-perfect couple? Almost makes me believe in fairy tales. "Mom, what are you doing here? Weren't you supposed to be in Florence?" George asked, clearly surprised. "Well, I have to leave tomorrow morning, George. I'm sorry I won't be there for the wedding, but I couldn't possibly miss your rehearsal dinner while I was still here in the Big Apple. It's such a special occasion, after all." "Yes, it's great to have you here, Mom. This is Luna's best friend, Casey. Casey, this is my mother, Diana." "Nice to meet you, Diana," Casey said, trying to sound polite. Likewise, Diana replied, her tone chilly. "So, have you had a chance to explore the hotel? It's quite luxurious." "Oh, I have seen my fair share of luxury, Casey. This place is nothing special. By the way, George, can we talk for a moment?" "Luna, Casey, would you excuse us?" George and Diana walked a few steps away, leaving Casey and me standing awkwardly. "Your mother-in-law seems challenging," Casey remarked. "You have no idea, Casey. I don't even know what she's doing here," I replied, feeling the tension in my shoulders. Diana eventually left the hall, and I quickly asked George, "Where did she go?" "Oh, she needed to freshen up, so I gave her our room key," he replied. That freshening up came at a huge price. The next morning, the day of the wedding, was supposed to be all happiness and excitement. Instead, it felt like a scene from a disaster movie. My dreamy Vivienne Westwood wedding gown had vanished into thin air. I turned our suite upside down, hoping I would find it hiding somewhere. But no luck. Tears started flowing as I realized the horror of it all. My wedding dress had disappeared on the biggest day of my life. I had nothing to wear. Could anything be worse? I called my folks, who were just in the next suite, and told them everything. They promised to rush over and help. A text to George had to suffice, but it would be ages before he could check it. thanks to the whole no seeing each other before the ceremony rule. Casey stepped in, suggesting we hit the nearest bridal shop and grab whatever white dress was available. It wasn't my dream dress, but it was better than nothing. As I stood in the shop surrounded by pretty white gowns that weren't the one, a sinking feeling settled in. The replacement dress was nice, but it couldn't replace the one that had mysteriously vanished. While I got dressed, my mind started ticking. Deanna, my not-so-loving mother-in-law, had paid a visit the night before. I knew she didn't exactly adore me, and the idea struck me like a lightning bolt. Could she be behind the disappearing dress? It sounded just like something Diana would do, a parting shot before my big day. I couldn't prove it, but it was all too suspicious. One minute the dress was hanging there, and the next it was nowhere to be found. Diana was the only one who had been alone in our suite. I made a phone call to Diana. "I was waiting for you to call, Luna," she answered, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "What on earth did you do, Diana? Are you completely out of your mind?" "I did what I could to put a stop to this wedding." "You're absolutely crazy. Do you realize how mad George is going to be when he finds out about this?" "George can't marry you, Luna. I will not allow it." "George is going to marry me today, Diana, no matter what you do. Nothing can change that." "This was just my first attempt, Luna. Be prepared." "You keep saying that, Diana, but it will not make a difference. I must have done something right for George to choose me. I cannot believe he is marrying a woman like you." "Well, believe it because it's happening today. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a wedding to attend." Despite Diana's ridiculous antics, nothing could ruin our joy. Our wedding was like a fairy tale. Seriously, everything was perfect. Flowers were everywhere. George looked dashing, and I walked down the aisle in the last-minute gown that, I must admit, looked pretty darn amazing. My dad walked me down the aisle, and George shed a few tears. Our vows were heartfelt, promising a lifetime of love, support, and obsession with each other. As we exchanged rings, it hit me that this was the beginning of our epic adventure together. Then came the reception, a big fancy shindig with champagne flowing like there was no tomorrow. We danced, our friends and family gave the sweetest toasts, and the room was just bursting with love. After all the partying, George and I headed to our honeymoon suite. Alone at last, we couldn't help but grin like a couple of love-struck goofballs. We were officially married, and it felt so good. We were going to go on our honeymoon a month later because George had some work commitments, which was fine by me. I hadn't told George about his mom's trick. I wanted to deal with Diana when her little vacation was over. A few days after our picture-perfect wedding, George was back at work dealing with his usual commitments while I was chilling at home, soaking in that newlywed bliss. Life was pretty sweet. But then, out of the blue, my phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID, and of course, it was Diana. Now that was one call I definitely hadn't seen coming. "Luna, honey, it's Diana. I've made a terrible mishap. I got pickpocketed here in Florence of all places. I lost my passport. My friends have all flown out, and I'm stuck here alone. Your dad is a diplomat here in Italy, right? He was talking about it at the rehearsal dinner. Can you help me, my dearest? We are all family, after all. I'm sure your dad can pull some strings." "What family, Diana? Diplomat or not, it does not change the fact you made it pretty clear I'm not your family. Remember all those lovely things you said to me before our wedding." "Luna, please, I'm desperate here. My friends have left me all alone to figure this out on my own. I promise I'll make it up to you somehow. You know I can be difficult, but I'm still George's mother and your mother-in-law. I love you as my own." This is the sweetest lie I have ever heard. You are his mother, all right. Family does not treat each other the way you treated me. You missed our wedding for a silly fun trip that you take 6 times a year, made an appearance at our rehearsal dinner just so you could steal my dress and ruin my wedding. And now you want my help when it is convenient for you? Sorry, Diana, but I am not feeling particularly charitable right now. "Luna, I admit I have made mistakes, but you are the only one who can help me. I need to get back to New York. I have things to attend to." "You are so selfish. You're not even genuinely sorry, I bet." "I'm sorry, Diana. I'm not helping you. Goodbye." Just in case I forgot to mention, my dad is indeed a diplomat in Italy, and I'm half Italian. I grew up in Rome, but moved to New York City for school, and have been here ever since. But helping Diana? Nah, that was not in my cards. I was kind of anxious about George coming back, because that would mean I had to tell him everything. As I sat in our living room fidgeting with the hem of my dress, my mind raced. George was due home any minute, and I could not avoid the truth any longer. I knew he would not be mad at me, but at the same time, I didn't know how he would take so much news since the wedding day all at once. When George finally got home, I told him everything. "George, I've been meaning to tell you something." "Oh, what is it, Luna?" "Your mom, she was the one who stole my wedding dress. She admitted to it herself. The thing is, she doesn't like me. She didn't want me to be a part of the family. It was right before the wedding, and I was devastated. She just wanted to ruin everything for me." "Luna, I'm so sorry about my mom's behavior. That's just unacceptable. I can't believe she would do something like that. She tried to ruin it not just for you but for both of us. Don't worry, babe. I'm going to deal with this whenever she comes back." "There's something else, George." "What is it?" "Your mom called me today. Her passport has been stolen, and she wanted to get here as soon as possible. She asked for help from my dad." "What did you say?" "I'm sorry, George, but I could not say yes to help her after what she did. It just didn't feel right." "You know what, Luna? She deserves it. I'm glad you did that. She can deal with her own problems, no matter how much time it takes. We're not helping her. She needs to learn that her actions have consequences. We're not going to bail her out." After the whole drama, George and I finally got to enjoy our European honeymoon. We packed our bags and traveled across the continent, soaking in the sights and sounds of romantic cities. Paris, Venice, Rome, you name it, we were there, making memories that would last a lifetime. We even visited my parents in Rome. It was a sweet treat. One day, while sipping coffee at a cute cafe in Paris, we got a text from George's dad. It was a message from Diana. She was texting from her husband's phone. She had miraculously made it back home after 2 months. Talk about good timing. George had a good laugh about it, and honestly, we couldn't care less. When we got back home, Diana tried to reach out, hoping for reconciliation, but George and I were like, thanks, but no thanks. We stuck to our guns and focused on our own happiness. We decided it was best to keep our distance. 4 months into our married life, and here we are, stronger than ever. George and I have become quite the dynamic duo. We've grown, cried, laughed, and supported each other through thick and thin. Our love story is not some fairy tale. It's real, it's messy, and it's uniquely ours.